Welcome everybody. I hope this all finds you well. My name is Tristan Dowell and I am the Global Vice President of Luxury Lifestyle and Leisure Sales for Hyatt Corporation. I'm thrilled to be joined here today with key luxury leaders from Virtuoso, ILTM, Hyatt to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the luxury landscape and also our collective road to recovery. It's with great pleasure to welcome Matthew Upchurch, CEO of Virtuoso.
Thank you.
Alison Gilmore, Portfolio Director of ILTM.
Thank you.
And Jack Horne, Global Head of Sales and Revenue at Hyatt.
Thank you, Tristan.
Right, I just really want to say thank you all for taking the time to share your perspectives and insights on luxury travel. It's certainly been quite a fascinating and tremendous few months as well that we've seen. But I'd really like to start about the whole thing around well-being and what we've all experienced as an industry over the last few months. And well-being, how really that's affected us personally. And I'll give you an example as well, is that how to prioritize my well-being was with my two children have been saying, Daddy, I'd like to go fishing. And really it was about for me to say, I want to connect with nature for them, get them off from the screen time. And I took them fishing, and I've sort of made that a priority every second weekend. Well, I'm not catching too many fish. My children are loving the great outdoors and just being connected. Alison, I'd like you to sort of share what you've how you prioritize well-being during this time as well, personally.
Thanks, Tristan. Well, like many people in the world, I took the opportunity to get really fit and then unfit at the same time. So I've been really, really healthy, now not so much. But there have been so many wellness brands out there doing some really great online activity during lockdown. I think we're all spoiled for choice and they got things up and running really quickly. I was really lucky to spend my lockdown out in the gorgeous English countryside, and I went out hiking every day. And my Fitbit has apparently told me I've walked the length of India. I've got my India badge. I didn't know there was any such thing, but I've got my India badge. So I've done some serious walking. But I think for me, it's not just about the physical. It was very easy to be isolated during lockdown. We're all in our homes. And I think it was that staying connected that I really found important. And, I run quite a big team. And I made sure that we all stayed connected with each other. We did weekly team yoga. We had a very competitive weekly quiz instead of a team meeting. So it was just about that staying connected and making sure that I wasn't isolated and that anyone I knew didn't feel isolated as well, that, while they're all in lockdown, because it was a really hard time for all of us. So I think, for me, priority was one, absolutely being out and about in nature and doing my hiking, but not getting isolated and making people feel in contact with each other.
Oh, thank you for sharing. Matthew, how about you?
Well, thank you. I totally agree about the nature perspective as well. That's very important, and the physical activity. So I'll build on that and just say that the other thing that I've been saying in my weekly updates to our entire global network is just a reminder that self-care is an active pursuit. It needs to be prioritized. It needs to be scheduled. You need to do something. So it needs to be an active rather than a passive pursuit. One of the other things that I've done a lot is there are an amazing number of fabulous podcasts nowadays. Some of my favorites are, as you can imagine, some of our past keynote speakers. Dr. Brene Brown has become incredibly amazing. We had her 6 months after her first TEDx talk. Simon Sinek has an incredible one called Optimism. And there's just a lot of really, really fabulous ones. So I love listening to that. And then the other thing that I did is I've always talked about that the greater purpose of Virtuoso is enriching lives through human connection. And so I've really made an effort to set times to talk to people, not about business, not about whatever, but just people that inspire me, right? People that I want to learn from. And so I've been setting aside time with those folks.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. I can recall the Simon Sinek. That was a great session we had. I remember that. Jack, would love to get your, what's your priority being around well-being?
Sure. I think for me, it's been different phases. With well-being being at the core Hyatt's purpose to care for our people, to be their best. I think we live and breathe this in work every day, and we're very sensitive to taking care of our people. But personally, I think for me, it started out with puzzles. I did a lot of puzzles in the beginning when we were grounded, in our house and really didn't want to go outside or anything like that. And I know I found it very soothing to get away from a Zoom call and do a puzzle for a little time. And then it moved to kind of backyard yoga, which I'm not a yoga person, but to get outside and do some yoga was very helpful. And my wife would tell me that the trees are more limber than I am, but that's okay. And so that's been what we've been doing in our free time. And I think a lot about, you see a lot of pictures behind me. That's my family when they were younger. But we've traveled together. We've gone on holiday a few times and have had a good experience despite what's going on out there. So those are just elements of what I've tried to take care of in terms of family and my personal life. But we really do try to live and breathe this in everything we do every day with our associates as well.
Thanks for sharing. And that leads in nicely really to the next question I have for all three of you. We know luxury travelers have sought out wellness, travel experiences, for many years. And I think we can all agree that this space will continue to flourish as we begin to see recovery from COVID-19. Matthew, I read with interest, I know that Virtuoso recently released a report about COVID-19, how it's transformed the luxury travel arena. Could you share, a little more about the results? And were there any trends that really surprised you?
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. And what was very interesting is that one of the things I've been talking a lot about now that I think I've known for a long time, but it's really come to focus is any kind of major disruption, any kind of major change always accelerates trends. And whether that's accelerates it on the way up or accelerates it on the way down. And one of those key trends is the whole thing, because when you think about what happened after 9/11, one of the biggest growths out of 9/11 was the turbocharging of multi generational travel, right? The fact that people and families, people woke up, life is precious, life is important. Those moments that parents and grandparents and kids tell us are the most memorable. So some of the key things that we found is that obviously wellness travel actually is one of those key trends. And I think it's that taking care of ourselves, being there. I myself just got back from a week. It's the first thing I've done really so the very first, even during COVID, thing that I actually did was go to a wellness program. It was a pretty tough one. It's one where we hike 10 to 12 miles every morning and you get up at 5:30 in the morning and whatever, but we're all very happy to be there. So I think that's that. Then some of the other trends were some of the more obvious. Willingness to travel was very correlated to age groups. So the older the client, the more trepidation as far as travel. So that's pretty obvious. And obviously the whole traveling from within your home and those ranges. But having said that, I think one of the things that we have to be very careful about, we've been discussing and training travel advisors for decades. And one of the things we always train our advisors about is don't sell out of your own pocketbook, right? Particularly when you're dealing with a luxury sector. And so one of the new narratives is don't sell out of your own risk profile. I've been around a while, and so I was around before the baby boomers were, the hot market that they were, and now the millennials and all that. But, when you think about the longevity revolution that comes back to this whole wellness thing, the baby boomer generation is going to be the first generation in the history of the planet that when the last baby boomer turns 60, which will be in 2024, 80% of that entire generation is expected to live another additional generation, 20 to 25 years. It's never happened before, and in relative health. So I think the one thing that we have to make sure is not look at these correlations as absolutes. People have always made the mistake with the boomers around the world, in the developed world, that those trends, it's a very diverse group of people. So I think that close to home wellness, and again, I think multi-generational travel will continue and particularly in family pods. I think the one new thing that I've seen is instead of multi-generational, it's multi-families. So families that actually know each other, literally creating pod compounds, right? Because they feel that they're together. So those are some of the key results.
Thanks for sharing that, Matthew. And I think that it's very interesting as well, because I think even as a result of COVID-19, we really have seen sort of communities come together even more so around well-being and wellness. You know, maybe well-being and wellness wasn't so top of mind, and now you're seeing this sort of real area blossom with people doing fun runs, with people just doing community walks. Thanks for sharing that.
And it's also an acceleration of not just being physical, by the way. It's the holistic view of wellness as well. That's the other thing I think I'd like to impart.
Yeah, mindfulness. That's the key thing. Thanks again for that. You know, just sort of moving forward a little bit further, you know, as organizations that, you know, operate on a global scale, you know, all three of our organizations operate on a global scale. What are you seeing in different parts of the world? It's, you know, we know that there's different things happening in different parts of the world. And, you know, would love to sort of get your perception on that, Alison, from ILTM. What are you seeing around the world?
Well, we're seeing that Asia Pacific is still, you know, the growth story. Before lockdown, the Asia Pacific region was the fastest growing in terms of high net worth individuals, and this is expected to continue. And it's not just a China story. You know, the growth, the well-established markets such as Japan and Australia and Korea, along with some of the other fast-growing ones like Vietnam, India, and Pakistan, you know, they're all going to contribute to the creation of more high net worth individuals. So we're definitely putting our money on Asia going forward. Also, you know, the Asians are better prepared in a post-COVID world. You know, they've lived through SARS, and I think they'll probably return quicker than the rest of us in Asia. For Europe and the Americas, it's still a big domestic story, and we think it's likely to stay this way for a while. As I was saying earlier, you know, I was down in Cannes in July, and it was full. All the hotels were full. It was really busy, but everyone down there was French. Usually in July and August, you know, there's a lot of Europeans from all over, lots of Americans, but it was, I'd say, 99% French domestic travelers. So, you know, we're definitely seeing that continue. Also, very recently, a lot of the big hotels in London with some really good suites are telling us the suites are the thing that are being booked up. You know, and this isn't a 1 or 2 night stay. This is a 14-night stay in some of the best and most expensive suites in town, which I think is a good news story. And also, you know, is this leisure at the moment? I think corporate is likely to, you know, not pick up for some time to come. So from an ILTM perspective, that's what we've been seeing over the last few months.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, Alison. Jack, how about you?
Thanks, Tristan. We're delighted that 87% of our global properties have resumed operations. We're very happy with the China progress and mainland China business. In fact, in the last 3 weeks, we have seen transient pace increase over the levels of the same 3 weeks last year in 2019. And I think that's just rather amazing, given that most of the business is domestic business. So good news there, and as well as from other Asia Pacific countries as well. Shorter booking windows for certain, indicating people are really ready to change the scenery and travel. We've introduced an extended stay package called Work from Hyatt, and it has exceeded our expectations. Really, this is a package that's aimed towards families and couples, as well as individuals, and it helps people manage their work-school life balance. The benefits include food and beverage credits, some complimentary parking, as well as some local amenities from the hotels. And we factored agencies into this as well. So this is all available on the channels that the agencies book with as well. And the top 3 markets have been Florida, California, and Mexico. And we have almost 60 hotels participating now. So very excited about this. And I think in general, we believe there's a pent-up demand for travel as people, you know, the human desires to explore, and people are back doing this. And we look forward to the travel advisors being a big part of this for us. Thanks, Tristan.
Thank you, Jack. And you know, Matthew, that segues, you know, really nicely. I mean, what about how are Virtuoso seeing, you know, different parts of the world, especially with your growth around the world as well?
Well, I can tell you this: I've never been more grateful to be a fully global organization. And one of the more delightful things that we've been able to see is really building the relationships between our in-market or in-country advisors with our in-market and in-country or regional partners. So that has been something that we've seen everything. We've literally seen everything from advisors renting an RV and visiting properties all over their region, and everything in between. So I highly recommend that all our properties that are part of Virtuoso reach out to the in-market people. And I think it's the same thing, again, what we were saying earlier. The only other thing I would add to what Alison said is, one of our we've continued to add members in China through this. We have a team there. At the beginning of the pandemic, I had literally said, well, what great timing to open up an office in Shanghai in November of 2019. Actually, it was a great time to open up an office in Shanghai. It turned out to be a really good thing. And I think the other thing that I wanted to emphasize that we all need to put pressure on is, right now, there's a lot of people that are actually willing to travel based on very diverse risk profiles. Probably the number one inhibitor, right, is the issue of being stuck. So government policies, credibility, accessibility, all those things are very, very important. And also, Hyatt was an early leader, and congratulations on that, because literally neck and neck with a vaccine, the number one thing that our clients are saying is, I'm willing to put my bets down and travel, or at least make my reservations, but make sure that your deposit and cancellation policies are friendly to me. So cancellation and deposit policies right now are very, very important to secure the business.
Thank you for sharing that, Matthew, and certainly that overall insight. Jack, we know many leisure travelers are eager to get away, experience something new, a bit of a change of scenery, but they won't do so, unless they truly feel safe. How has the experience changed, Jack? And what can guests expect when they walk into our Hyatt hotel?
Thank you, Tristan. At the onset of COVID-19, we created a global care and cleanliness commitment to enhance protocol and procedures. And as part of the commitment, we launched a council of medical experts like the Cleveland Clinic, as well as industry professionals like American Airlines, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, Merritt's Travels, and others, to inform us on our decisions and ensure that we are focused on the right touch points. We created a role of hygiene and well-being leaders in the hotels, and they were really put in place to make sure the hotels are adhering to the new standards. We know guest and colleague peace of mind is critical, and we were the first hotel chain to offer the GBAC Star accreditation through the GBAC Council, so we're proud of that as well. And we've taken great care to reimagine the hotel experience, as we know our guests want to stay safe. And some really good examples of this are a private dining experience in the suites at the Park Hyatt Moscow, the rooftop yoga sessions that the Grand Hyatt Berlin is doing right now, which I'd love to participate in that, and also the picnic dinners that the Hyatt Regency Huntington Beach is doing on their lawn, and some private barbecue experience at the Hyatt Regency Lake Tahoe overlooking the fabulous lake. So some really creative things are being done by many of the hotels around the world. And giving our guests more control with less contact is really important. We've enhanced our online check-in. We've increased our mobile food and beverage ordering capabilities, and we're expanding Hyatt mobile entry around the world. So these are real important to guests. And I'm really proud of a collaboration and partnership that we're doing with Headspace, where we're offering guided meditations and sleep content to guests and colleagues. So really good stuff that's going on in the hotels. So we're very proud of that. Thanks for asking, Tristan.
Oh, thank you. Now, for our audience that's tuned in, and as they're all eager to understand a little bit about the future and the long-term outlook, Alison, I'd like to turn to you on that area. Prior to COVID-19, ILTM had named 2020 the year of conscious travel, which refers to a way of traveling that seeks to balance personal fulfillment with human rights, sustainable communities, and the environment. How do you see conscious travel moving forward in a post-COVID world?
Well, Tristan, I think we're just going to see this trend accelerate. You know, there are a number of factors why this is true. And I think nature has been the star of the show this year. I think all of us have really loved the moments when we could actually finally be allowed to go outside. And I think this has been really good for both our mental and our physical health. And, you know, green has gone mainstream. It's now across all age groups and all markets. You know, people are putting more emphasis on sustainability and locally sourced goods and basically the safety of the great outdoors. Because never before, you know, in our lifetime has it been that important to, you know, be away from people and not be together. And I think as humans, we've become far more aware of each other. Personally, for me, I think we've seen everything move away from me and more to we, as people realize, you know, we've got to solve all these problems together. No one on their own can do this. We do all need each other as a world. And I think this year, you know, we've had to do a lot of education and face up to our own biases on gender and race and equality, as we're going to see this play out more and more. And I think as a force for good in travel in the decade ahead, you know, it's something we really have to do. And also just on, you know, health prevention, we've all got to, you know, be more appreciative of nature. And I think COVID has awakened a lot of things up in all of us. And hopefully this behavior will continue and it won't just be, that was 2020, let's move on and go back to the way we were before. I don't think we can. You know, I think we've all got to be responsible going forward, and travel plays a huge part in that. You know, we're never going to stop people traveling, and nor should we, because it's what we all love to do. But I think we've just got to do it better.
Thank you, Alison. That's very, very powerful. And Matthew, how do Virtuoso foresee this?
Well, thank you for asking. And this is a very rich and a very wonderful question, because we've been focused on this for over 10 years. And I love the fact that ILTM said that our term that we started is conscious comeback, that we want a conscious comeback. And I think first, let me give you some very important statistics. One of them is already a couple years old, but I think it's one of the most telling and most powerful statistics. We partnered with YouGov and did a study in over 18 countries of high net worth individuals. And the data point is one that fascinated me, because it's called the commoditization of quality. As the overall marketplace continues to raise the bar on quality, that quality becomes less and less perceptible based on the things that you expect. And therefore, high net worth individuals all over the world were starting to say, I'm making my decisions about what to purchase based on factors other than the quality I'm expecting to receive anyway. So the idea of being regenerative, being sustainable, about what you do for the community and all that, those stories need to be infused into everything that we do. And at Virtuoso, we think of sustainability. We have 3 pillars of sustainability: the environment, the preservation of natural and cultural heritage, and benefiting of the local economies. And it's kind of, you know, eerie to think that a year ago we were talking about over-tourism and how bad that can be. And that's absolutely accurate. But the flip side is under-tourism, which is literally turning out to be a disaster. So one of the things that I wanted to say very specifically is we need to put the picture, the humanity of who these people are in everything we do. They need to see the chefs, this person, that everybody who's out there. We need to humanize it, because when you start looking at numbers like 122 million jobs lost, it's like watching the news. It becomes white noise. It's when you see and you personalize it with real people that's important. And the other thing that I want to say that we've had some research on is we're seeing a very strong correlation between people's psychology of the belief that your health and safety protocols are legit if your sustainability credentials are legit. In other words, there's a correlation between your sustainability and your overall look of quality and health and protocols.
Thank you, Matthew. And you know that's a really sort of real powerful message, you know, and some great insight to share. And I really just want to stay on this a little bit, because you know, inclusion and diversity are of critical importance. And while there is so much progress to be made, there has been at least some heightened awareness right now, which is, much needed. As an industry, what can we do to make travel more inclusive? And Jack, let's start with you on this one.
Sure, thanks, Tristan. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are certainly not new for Hyatt. In the last 5 years, we've made significant strides to advance our work, launching our Global Diversity Council and elevating the work of the 7 diversity business resource groups. I'm very proud to co-chair the Women at Hyatt group along with our Chief HR Officer, Malika Myers. In June, we announced Change Starts Here commitments with an actionable 2025 goal specifically focused on increasing representation and supporting Blacks and minorities-owned businesses and community organizations. Commitments here will focus on 3 key areas: who we employ, develop, and advance, who we support, and who we buy from and work with. Within our commercial services organization, I lead a team of colleagues who are focused on expanding recruiting and resourcing partners to help support these initiatives. It has completely been top of mind for us, not just recently, but over our 60 years as a company. So that's kind of what Hyatt's doing right now.
Thanks, Jack. And Alison and Matthew, I know that you used to touch upon this before. Is there anything you'd like to further add to that critical area as well?
Well, I just think it's not what can we do, it's what we've got to do. Things have got to start changing now. It can't just be something we're still talking about. Inclusion and diversity, they've just got to be part of our everyday. We shouldn't even be having this whole conversation about it across the world now. It's 2020. We should be inclusive and diverse. And I think action's got to happen, and it's got to happen now.
Yeah, the only thing that I would add that's great things, by the way, it's really congratulations to what Hyatt has done. I myself have received an education on this call here on this, so thank you, Jack. We've always been a member-driven organization, and it's always been through listening. And so we have a diversity and inclusion group that has been convened and trying to basically do some of the very same things that Jack talked about at Hyatt. And having said that, I think the only thing I would add to this is we also need to get across the fact that this is one of the most diverse industries in the world, and that therefore the reason that we need to protect this industry is because this industry already in my sector, which is travel agencies, right? We have one of the largest women-owned businesses, entrepreneurial sectors in the world. And a lot of diversity around the world. So we've got to get the message across that one of the reasons that that this industry is so important is because this industry is at the tip of the spear of actually creating the kinds of opportunities that will not be around if basically there's incessant consolidation, and that's one thing that I hope and doesn't happen through this pandemic.
Thank you all for that. I mean that's a really sort of nice sort of key sort of segue into the next thing, is because we all know how critically important travel advisors are to this industry. What lasting impact will COVID-19 have on the role of a travel advisor? And Matthew, I think we'll let you kick that one off.
Well, first of all, every time there's ever been some sort of a major issue, travel advisors have actually benefited from it. So, I mean, everything from what seems insignificant now, like the volcanoes in Iceland, right, to everything in between. And I do think that, I think one of the misnomers of our profession is every single industry in the world is bifurcating or polarizing itself between optimized commodity and optimized experiential, right? And so the reality is that while we have big giant OTAs around the world that do a very good job of what they do, or what they're supposed to do, our sector is not as well known because it's not dominated by 1 or 2 or 3 different brands. And so I think that the role of the travel advisor is actually going to become more complicated and yet more sought after. It will become more complicated because what is expected of travel advisors is continuing to expand. It's what they do before, during, and after the trip that's always made them who they are. I've always told travel advisors, if you tell somebody that you're in the business of booking travel, you lost before you started. So booking travel is the simplest part of it, you know, or the most reasonable piece of it. But it's all those things. And I think that what has been happening, again, to my point about acceleration of trends, more and more advisors are actually involved in a more holistic approach of the way they help their clients. A key driver of ours through this pandemic has been to provide some digital tools, some training on how to make advisors be better stewards of helping clients think about the future and not be as reactive. You know, one of our monikers is return on life, and we basically say, why would a high net worth individual have a wealth advisor to help them optimize their financial assets, but not have somebody in their lives that helps them optimize their most important and valuable non-renewable asset, their free leisure time? So the reality is that's kind of where this is going. The other thing that I would like to say, and I think Hyatt has been a great leader in this, and thanks to you, Tristan, leading this, is the understanding of the advisor. We are not an intermediary. You gave me the great pleasure of having lunch with Mark last year in Chicago, and we talked about the fact that the travel advisor is not an intermediary, right? In 1997, 1998, right, everybody told me that Expedia was going to wipe us off the face of the earth. And then here we are 30 years later, right? And not only we're around, but then I wake up a few years ago and I'm put in the same boat as OTAs. And I'm like, wait a minute, I feel like Rip Van Winkle. Like, what is this? These were the people that are going to wipe us off the face of the earth. And I remember Mark had this great comment when we had lunch in Chicago, because I said, advisors are actually an extension of a smart direct-to-consumer strategy. They are your commission-based, we only pay you if you perform salespeople. And the one thing that I keep trying to emphasize is the diversity of the high net worth individual around the world is exploding with the amount of diversity, generational, cultural, you know, risk profile, I mean, passion points. And the beauty of the advisor, the growth of advisors around the world, is that the diversity of the advisor matches the diversity of the client. And the ability of that advisor to actually put forth the real value proposition of a Hyatt brand, right? And I'll never forget when Mark said that, because I made the joke. I said, if I got an opportunity to present to the board of directors of Hyatt, I would say, how would you like me to build the world's greatest sales force that could give us higher ADRs, higher on property spend and all that? Oh, and by the way, you don't have to pay them unless they perform. Would you like that? Well, everybody would say yes. I said, well, great. They're called travel advisors, particularly Virtuoso ones, right? But then Mark said, you left something out. And I said, what's that, Mark? And he said, your advisors and advisors in general understand how to get our personality across, our brand across. Whereas other forms of distribution are all about amalgamating everything, putting into a big giant goulash or a big thing and trying to commoditize the whole thing. So obviously I'm a little passionate about this subject.
No, not naturally, Matthew, but great insight, because, you know, and just building upon that as well, because, you know, with all wonderful hotel brands out there and beautiful destinations and cruising is that they help amplify the brands, you know, on all these brands. I mean, Jack, would love to get your thoughts on the travel advisor arena.
I don't know that I can top Matthew there. I think everything he said was really spot on. And I love the idea that the travel advisor community is an extension of our sales force. I see it the same way. I mean, you know, travel advisors' expertise about destinations and experiences, they're increasingly being sought out. And it's that trust and that communication and that honesty and knowledge that they have. I see this being critically important in a post-COVID world. You know, things like chat features in the GCC, the global call centers for us, will become even more important in terms of enhanced communication, just for follow-up on details. And we have services now that cater specifically to the advisors if they need them, and that will be important. COVID-19 has shed light on the importance of personal relationships and human connection. We believe that travelers will work with advisors given the position as a trusted source. I mean, there's just no doubt there. And at Hyatt, we truly value these relationships. And I'm glad Matthew gave a shout out here, because this is where I turn to the moderator and say, you know, everything that we've accomplished really in the travel advisor community is a result of Tristan's team and Tristan's leadership. Over the last 2 or 3 years, I think we've really strengthened these relationships, and it's not stopping anytime soon. So I say to you, Tristan, thank you. You don't always get to thank the moderator, but in this case, I'm thanking you.
Thank you.
On the onset of COVID-19, we quickly gathered advisors, I mentioned this earlier, to seek their feedback on what we should be doing as a company. And it's through these valuable insights we learned a tremendous amount of what we should do in the early stages of COVID. And coming out of the pandemic, we remain focused on staying even closer to this community of advisors. So, you know, I thank them all, and I know they're going to be a huge part of the recovery as we see leisure and luxury leading the way out of the recovery, not so much corporate or MICE business. So really important to Hyatt. Thanks, Tristan.
No, thanks, Jack. And I really would like just to thank the industry and, you know, my counterparts, you know, around the world, and obviously my team, because, you know, as I think Alison and Matthew, you coined it earlier, is that, you know, together, you know, we really can go, you know, and really help this road to recovery. And that really sort of just lends itself to the next question I have for, you know, for all three of you. You know, as we've discussed, the luxury travel landscape will look very different once COVID-19 is behind us. On the other hand, what will remain the same? Alison, I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Well, I think what is clear is that the pandemic has not put an end to the urge to travel. I think virtual holidays will never be a thing. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to watch the Maldives on my Zoom. You know, I want to go there, and everybody wants to do that. You know, we've all got to thank the likes of Zoom and Teams. You know, they've done an incredible job for us this year. But, you know, the real thing is always going to be out there, and people are always going to want to travel. I think someone said before, it's a fundamental human desire. But I think we just need to be much more conscious of the value of it going forward. But, you know, people will always want to travel, and that is never going to change. And just one thing I'd like to add about the travel advisors is that we need them now more than ever. You know, that we really do. In a post-COVID world, everyone should have an advisor. If you're going to go out there in the world, go with the best advisors, because we do need them, and they're a massive part of the luxury travel industry.
Well, I hope these luxury travel advisors are listening, you know, deeply here, because it's very powerful. Matthew, what do you think will remain the same?
Well, first of all, I think that one of the things that's really, you know, so many good things have been said on this call. I'm sitting here thinking, like, about a year ago, I thought to myself, you know, when you think of the effects of and the pressures of commoditization, perfect information, money, you know, money, technology, and everything, I actually think that one of the few things that is going to maintain anybody's margin is, how did you make me feel? How did you make me feel is going to become the most powerful way of maintaining a margin. Because again, as we talk about the commoditization of quality, you can have all the hardware, you can have all this stuff, whatever, but when you talk about the kind of culture that Hyatt has, you talk about the way you treat your people, you think about all these things, how you make me feel is becoming one of the only sustainable ways of maintaining a margin. And that, by the way, also comes back to the fact that it's transparency as well. People don't mind, you know, advisors, for example, we cannot ultimately guarantee anything. We can only help people make informed decisions. And it's amazing how resilient and how well the client does when they are dealt with in a very transparent way, and sometimes in a very vulnerable way. I think one of the mistakes people make sometimes is they think, if I'm supposed to be the expert, that saying I don't know or something like that. So I think the way in which we communicate is accelerating, and I think that transparency is going to be super important. And so I think that those things, and then everything else we've already said about the trends that are accelerating with regards to, you know, nothing motivates human beings more than taking something away from them that they thought was that they took for granted. So, and one little piece of good news, at least from the perspective of travel, you know, and particularly in the luxury sector, this is a bunch of very well-traveled people that haven't been able to spend their money this year. So they got a lot of money to spend next year. So it's one of the reasons why we're seeing all those suites and all those things being taken over. So believe me, they, you know, and that goes to the whole idea about the prioritization of spending on experiences rather than goods, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, Matthew. Jack, you know, learnings, takeaways from you post-COVID.
Yeah, those were really well said comments. Thanks for that. You know, Hyatt's purpose, I don't mean to be cliches, but to care for people is to be their best. And I would say that has served as our North Star for our decision making, and even more so since March. Along with our purpose, our long-standing focus on delivering high-end quality experiences ensures that we're well positioned to meet the demands of COVID-19 as it subsides. You know, looking ahead, our strategy to grow with intent and expand our footprint in locations that matter the most to our guests remains really unchanged. We've opened a number of properties, which I think surprised a lot of people this year, including the new Grand Hyatt Nashville, the Miraval Berkshires, which is a wonderful wellness resort, the Park Hyatt Auckland, and the renovation and reopening of the Park Hyatt Aviara, one of my personal favorites, and our first hotel in Bulgaria, the Hyatt Regency Sofia. So those are some great properties that opened this year in this environment. And we're really happy to announce some new developments, including the Grand Hyatt in St. Lucia, the Alila Maria Beach Resort in Ensenadas, California, as well as the conversion of the Hotel Biblos on Spain's Costa del Sol, which will be part of our Unbound collection. And then a number of new Thompson branded hotels in Buckhead, in Savannah, in Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio that will all open next year or late this year. So we're doing a lot of great things in terms of the brand continuing to grow, which is a good sign for the future. So good news on this front, Tristan. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. And thank you to all three of you. And we are coming to the end. However, I do have one final question, you know, for all three of you. You know, like our other wonderful colleagues in this travel industry all around the world, we all enjoy, you know, what travel brings to our lives, how it opens our minds, connects us with culture. You know, my young children, for example, are asking me to take them to South Africa and China for a bit of nature, a bit of culture. You know, can I ask you where you'd like to go next on your vacation? Let's start with you, Alison.
Oh, it's a question. Do you know what? I think I would. I have actually been to the Maldives, but I would like to go and just lie on a beach for 10 days where there isn't anything else to do. And I think if I could get there quickly, it's a bit of a flight from here. But I think for me, going to the Maldives for a couple of weeks would just be really good right now.
That sounds wonderful. Matthew.
This is a very, very hard one, like I'm sure it is for all of us, but one of the most impactful places in the world that for me throughout my lifetime has been Africa. And for me, there's no other area of the world that is being more impacted right now than Africa. So for me, just to go there because I love the people, I love the nature and everything, but also just to give some hope for myself and for them and everybody, because they need it.
Yeah. Jack.
Well, this is a kind of a dual answer for me, because I hear my wife in this year saying we have to go to Croatia, which I would like to do, but I'm also scheduled to visit Scotland for the first time. I can't believe this, to play golf next June with some of my friends, and as a 60th birthday present to myself, I guess. But I'm excited for both those things, so it doesn't matter to me which one happens first.
Tristan, what about you then?
Yeah, well, true, Tristan. Yes.
Well, first and foremost, I definitely want to take my daughter Freya to China. She wants to do the Great Wall of China. My son Hugo absolutely loves animals, so I think a safari is very much on the cards. So I like what you said, Matthew. I think, you know, Africa, it really sort of points us in the right direction, and how we can help the overall world by what we can learn. So I'm looking forward to doing those two things. So hopefully in the not too distant future. Now, I know that we could carry on this conversation for another hour, but the time has come to an end. I do want to say sincerely thank you, Alison, Matthew, and Jack, for sharing these valuable insights and your perceptions. It's so important as we continue to recover. Whilst 2020 certainly looks different, we've all had a great deal of things to think about, change, adapt. I'm personally very excited, what the luxury travel arena does have, because, through adversity and through challenging times, you can look at, a different way forward. And with our wonderful colleagues all around the world in the industry, I really am excited about what we can do and how we can, collectively move to this road to recovery in a meaningful and truly valuable way in bringing humankind together again. So I just want to say thank you again. Can't wait to see you all in person. And Matthew, Alison, Jack, thanks once again. Take care, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan.
Thanks.